I found my wife's secret stash of $250, $0 worth of offshore gold, and I just discovered she's planning to sign away the house and our family business to cover her legal debts, all while claiming she's the innocent victim. I never thought I'd be the guy sitting here telling a story like this, but here I am. You want to hear the crazy, the betrayal, the shock, that moment when your entire world flips upside down. Well, buckle up, because it all started with a few small signs that gradually turned into a full-blown nightmare. My wife had always been a bit high maintenance, but I figured that was just her personality. She's smart, beautiful, and we'd been together for over 10 years. I thought we had a good thing going, until I started noticing things that didn't add up. It all began a few months ago when I noticed small changes in her behavior. She'd come home later than usual, always with a story about work or some urgent legal matter. She'd be secretive about her phone, even more than usual. She'd hide it whenever I walked into the room, and I'd catch her deleting messages or hiding certain apps. At first, I just thought she was stressed, maybe over some legal issue she wasn't telling me about. She's a lawyer, so I figured her job could be intense sometimes. But then I started noticing she was acting different around money, too. She'd spend a lot more than usual hiding receipts, and I caught her trying to hide some of her bank statements. One evening, I decided to do a little digging. I wasn't suspicious at first. I just wanted to see if she was okay. I looked through her emails, her phone, and her files. What I found made my stomach drop. Hidden deep in her encrypted folder was a file labeled Offshore Assets. I opened it up, and there it was, documents showing she had accumulated over $250, $0 worth of gold stored offshore, in some secret vault she never mentioned. I couldn't believe it. Gold? Offshore accounts. Why? I've always been the one handling the bills, the investments, the business. Why was she hiding this? But that wasn't the worst part. As I kept digging, I found more. There were legal documents, contracts, that showed she was planning to sign away our house and the family business to cover her mounting legal debts. I knew she had some issues with her law practice, but I had no idea she was planning to sell everything we built together. When I confronted her about the offshore gold, she brushed it off with a snarky laugh, saying it was just a safety net, that I shouldn't be so paranoid. Yeah, right. The way she said it, like I was an idiot for questioning her. Then I caught her in a blatant lie. She told me she was at a conference in Chicago last week, but I found hotel receipts and photos from a guy I'd never seen before. Some tall, handsome guy with a smirk that made my blood boil. She'd been meeting someone behind my back, probably for sex, I thought. The more I uncovered, the more I realized how deep the lies went. She'd been sneaking around for months, hiding money, planning her escape, and still trying to pretend everything was fine. I felt betrayed, furious, like I'd been punched in the gut every time I thought I had a handle on our life. This wasn't just about her cheating on me physically. It was about her betraying everything we built, our trust, our future, our home. I couldn't believe she'd been planning to walk away with all of it, leaving me in the dust. And she had the nerve to act like she was the victim, crying and pretending she was innocent. That was the moment I realized I couldn't stay silent anymore. I had to make a plan. I had to figure out what I was going to do with all this information, because the truth was I was furious, but I also felt lost. How did I get here? How did my wife become someone who was capable of such lies, deception, and betrayal? The answers were buried in her secrets, and I was just starting to uncover them. After I found all that stuff, her offshore gold stash, the legal documents, the hotel receipts, I felt like I'd been hit by a truck. My mind was racing, trying to process how I had missed all the signs, how she could have been lying to me for months. I sat there in the dim light of our living room, staring at the pile of her hidden secrets, feeling a mixture of anger, betrayal, and a strange sense of numbness. I didn't even know where to start. My first instinct was to confront her right then and there, but I knew better. I needed a plan. I needed to think this through. That night I stayed up late, going over everything I'd found. I couldn't sleep. My mind kept circling back to the offshore gold, what she was planning to do with it, how much she had hidden. I knew that money was more than just some secret stash. It was her safety net, her escape route. She'd been planning to leave me, that much was clear. And she'd been lying about the debts, the legal problems, everything. She'd been spinning this web of lies, and I was caught right in the middle. The next morning, I decided I had to get more concrete evidence. I started digging into her financial accounts, contacting the lawyer she'd been working with, trying to see if I could get any official documents or proof of her plans. I also reached out to a private investigator I'd known from a previous case. I didn't trust her anymore. I needed someone who could look into her affairs discreetly, find out exactly what she was planning. When I told him what I'd discovered, he told me that she could be planning a major move, possibly to sell the house, the business, and disappear with her gold and her money. Meanwhile, kept up her act, acting innocent, crying when I pressed her about her whereabouts, claiming she was overwhelmed and stressed out with her legal issues. She insisted she was just trying to protect us from her debts, that she was the victim here. That was a lie, and I knew it. She was the victim, all right, of her own greed, her lies, her betrayal. I could see through her bullshit now. She'd been lying to me about everything, pretending she was the innocent wife, the victim of some unfair legal system. But I saw her for what she was, a woman who'd been plotting her escape, secretly hoarding gold and planning to walk away from everything. I have to admit I was hurt, deeply. Not just because she cheated on me, but because she'd been lying about her entire life, her money, her intentions, her love. It hurt to think that the woman I married, the woman I loved, had been secretly planning her exit for months. I felt like a fool, like I'd been blind. But at the same time, I was furious. Furious at her lies, furious at her betrayal. I kept asking myself how I could have missed the signs, how I could have been so naive. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. Not with our marriage, not with our home, not with our business. I started thinking about what I needed to do next. I couldn't just confront her and hope she'd tell the truth. No, I had to be strategic. I had to gather everything, proof, documentation, everything I could use to protect myself and our assets. I had to prepare for the worst because I had a feeling things were about to blow up in a big way. And honestly, I was terrified of what would happen when she found out I knew. She was manipulative, good at lying, and I knew she'd try to spin it all to make herself look like the victim. Right now, I was just trying to stay calm, keep my head clear. I was hurt, angry, and confused, but I also knew I couldn't let her see that. I had to be the one in control. The next step was clear. I needed to get legal advice, see what my options were, and figure out how to protect everything we had, our house, our business, and my own sanity. Because this wasn't just about money or her secrets anymore. It was about my life, my future, and whether I could still trust my wife after everything I had uncovered. I didn't know what the endgame was, but I knew one thing: things were about to get a lot messier before they got better. Over the next couple of days, I threw myself into gathering evidence and trying to understand just how deep her plans went. I couldn't sleep, kept waking up with the image of her sneaking around, hiding money, and lying straight to my face. I knew I needed to be careful, so I started talking to a lawyer I trusted, someone who specialized in family law and financial disputes. I wanted to know what my rights were, what I could do to protect the house and the business, and how I could possibly uncover her full plans before she executed any of them. While I was doing that, was still acting like everything was fine, maybe a little stressed but otherwise innocent. She'd come home late, act extra bitchy when I questioned her, and then cry at the drop of a hat, claiming she was overwhelmed with legal issues and that I was overreacting. She tell me I was paranoid, that I was accusing her of things I had no proof of. But I had proof now: screenshots, bank statements, her secret files. I wasn't imagining this. One night, I decided I had to confront her directly. I couldn't keep pretending everything was normal. I sat her down after dinner, looked her in the eye, and told her I knew she'd been lying to me. I told her about the offshore gold, the debts, the plans to sell everything. Her face went white for a second, then she started to lie big time. She said she had no idea what I was talking about, that I was crazy, that I'd been reading too many conspiracy theories online. She told me she was just stressed and that I was overreacting because I didn't trust her. Yeah, right. She kept spinning stories, claiming she was innocent, that she'd never do anything to hurt me. But her words didn't match her eyes. I saw the panic behind her eyes, the way her hands trembled. She tried to tell me she was just trying to fix her legal problems, that she was doing everything for us, but I wasn't buying it. I knew she'd been planning her escape for months. I told her I wasn't stupid anymore, that I knew she was planning to leave, sell the house, the business, and run off with her gold. That's when she finally snapped. She yelled at me, called me paranoid, said I was turning into some kind of jealous, insecure husband. She accused me of spying on her, of invading her privacy. I told her I was just trying to protect what was ours and that I was done with her lies. That was the night I realized she was never going to admit the truth willingly. She kept crying, claiming she was the victim, that I was crazy for suspecting her. But I could see the cracks in her story. She was panicked, cornered, and I knew I had to act fast. I decided then and there that I couldn't trust her anymore. I called my lawyer the next morning, told him everything, and asked him what steps I should take to freeze our assets and prevent her from selling or transferring anything without my knowledge. I also started looking into hiring a private investigator to follow her, just in case she tried to make her move. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything I'd worked for, not without a fight. The emotional toll was brutal. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry, so angry I could barely think straight. How could she do this? How could she lie to me for so long? All the nights I stayed up worrying about her, all the times I thought she was stressed or overwhelmed, it was all a lie. She'd been planning her escape right under my nose. And the worst part, I still loved her, or at least I thought I did. But now I wasn't sure what love even meant anymore. All I knew was that I couldn't keep living in this fog of deception. I had to find out the whole truth, and I had to do it fast. Because if she was planning to sign away the house and the business, I needed to be the one in control before she took everything and left me with nothing. I was starting to realize that this was no longer just a fight over money. It was a fight for my entire life. The days that followed were a whirlwind of activity and suppressed rage. I kept my cool outwardly, but inside I was boiling. Every time I thought about sneaking around, hiding money, plotting to leave me penniless, I felt like I was losing my mind. I stayed up late every night, going over every document I'd uncovered, trying to piece together her full plan. I knew she was desperate to cover her tracks, so I had to be ahead of her. I met with my lawyer again, and we drafted a series of legal moves to freeze our assets and put a temporary hold on any property transfers. I also hired the private investigator I'd contacted. This guy was sharp, discreet, and experienced. I gave him the go-ahead to follow her, to see who she was meeting, where she was going, and what her next move might be. I didn't trust her anymore, not even a little. I knew she'd try to pull something sneaky, maybe try to sell the house or transfer the gold offshore before I could stop her. Meanwhile, was still pretending nothing was wrong. She'd come home pretending to be exhausted, acting like I was just imagining things. But I saw the fear in her eyes when she thought I wasn't looking. She'd get defensive if I pressed her too hard, and she'd throw out false accusations, calling me paranoid or insecure. That night, I caught her lying about her whereabouts again. She said she was meeting with a client, but I saw the hotel receipts from the same night, and she'd been with that guy again, the one she was meeting behind my back. That was the breaking point. I decided I had to confront her again, but this time I had to be more strategic. I sat her down in the kitchen, looked her straight in the eyes, and told her I knew everything. I told her I had evidence of her plans, her offshore gold, her debts, her scheme to sell the house and business. Her face drained of color and she started to protest, but I cut her off. I told her I wasn't going to let her get away with this, that I was done playing nice. She tried her usual victim act, crying, saying she was overwhelmed, that I was overreacting. She claimed she only did all this because she was trying to protect us, that her debts had spiraled out of control and she was just trying to get back on her feet. I told her I didn't buy it, that her lies had gone on for too long and I saw her for what she really was, a woman who'd been planning her escape, secretly hoarding money and betraying everything we'd built. Her tears turned into angry tears and she yelled at me, calling me a jealous, controlling husband. That night I knew I had to act fast. I called the lawyer again to finalize the legal freeze on our assets. I also told the private investigator to keep following her, to see if she made any moves to transfer the gold or sign any papers. I felt like I was in a race against time. If she managed to sell the house or transfer the gold offshore, I'd lose everything. I couldn't let that happen. The emotional was exhausting. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and furious, more furious than I'd ever been in my life. How could she do this? How could she lie so convincingly? At the same time, I was grieving the woman I thought I knew, the woman I loved. I kept asking myself if I'd missed the signs, if I'd been blind to her true nature all along. Part of me wanted to believe there was still hope, that maybe she was just overwhelmed and would come clean. But deep down, I knew this was far worse than I'd imagined. I kept telling myself I had to stay strong. I had to protect what was mine, our home, our business, my sanity. I knew I couldn't trust her anymore. Not with my money, not with my future. She'd been lying to me for months, maybe longer. And now I had to brace myself for whatever came next. I was starting to see that this wasn't just about money or infidelity, it was about survival. Because if she managed to pull her plan off, I'd wake up one day with nothing left, no house, no business, no trust. And I wasn't about to let that happen. Not without a fight. The tension in the house was unbearable. Every glance, every word from felt like walking on thin ice. I kept my composure outwardly, but inside I was boiling, angry, hurt, and increasingly paranoid. The lawyer had sent over some documents confirming that she was attempting to transfer assets, including the house and the business, into her name or into offshore accounts. I was furious. She had been planning this for months, maybe longer, and I was just discovering it now. I knew I had to act quickly before she executed her final move. Meanwhile, the private investigator kept following her, reporting back with snippets of her movements. She was meeting with people I didn't recognize, lawyers, financial advisors, even some shady-looking characters at night. It was clear she was trying to finalize her escape plan. I couldn't believe I'd been so blind. She'd been lying to me, cheating on me, and secretly plotting to leave me with nothing. It was like waking up from a nightmare I couldn't escape. One afternoon, I found myself alone in the house, going through her emails and texts on her phone. I needed to understand her entire game. That's when I saw the emails between her and some offshore bank, discussing the gold she'd hidden and the transfer of assets. She'd been planning to sign papers to sell the house and transfer the business to cover her debts. She was so close to pulling it all off. I felt my stomach turn. This was real. I was about to lose everything if I didn't stop her. I decided I had to confront her again, but this time with everything on the table. I sat her down in the living room, pulled out the evidence I'd found, and laid it all out. I told her I knew about her offshore gold, her debts, her plans to sell the house and the business. Her face turned pale and she tried to deny everything, but I cut her off. I told her I wasn't going to let her destroy our life, not without a fight. I warned her that I had already taken steps to freeze the assets, to prevent her from signing any papers, and that I'd go to the authorities if necessary. She started to cry, big crocodile tears, and claimed she was the victim, that I was controlling and paranoid. She begged me to believe her, said she was just trying to fix her legal problems, that she loved me and didn't want to leave. But I saw right through her act. I knew she'd been lying all along. Her tears didn't fool me anymore. I told her she could spin her stories all she wanted, but I wasn't buying it. I told her I'd be calling the lawyer to get a court order to freeze everything, and I'd be hiring a forensic accountant to trace the gold in her offshore accounts. That night I couldn't sleep. My mind was racing. What if she managed to get away with it? What if I was too late? I knew I had to be prepared for the worst. I contacted the lawyer again, finalized the legal freeze, and made arrangements to get a court order. I also put a hold on the sale of the house and the business, just in case she tried to push through any transfers. I felt like I was fighting a losing battle, but I couldn't give up. The emotional toll was brutal. I'd loved her once, believed in her, and now I was faced with the harsh reality that she'd been lying and scheming behind my back. I felt betrayed, humiliated, and angry, so angry that I almost didn't recognize myself. I kept asking, Myself, how I could have missed all the signs, how I could have been so blind. But I knew I had to keep going, had to stay focused. I couldn't let her take everything we'd built just because she was desperate or greedy. This was a fight for my life, my future, my dignity. I realized that if I didn't act now, I might wake up one day with nothing. No house, no business, no trust left in my marriage. And I wasn't going to let that happen. No matter how much it hurt, I had to protect what was mine. Because at the end of the day, the biggest betrayal wasn't just the money or the affair. It was her complete failure to be honest, to be loyal, to be the woman I thought I knew. And I was determined to see this through, even if it meant tearing everything apart to do it. The days that followed felt like a blur of legal battles and emotional exhaustion. I had everything in place: the court orders, the freeze on assets, the forensic investigation into her offshore gold stash. Attempts to deny everything and plead innocence only made me more certain of her guilt. She kept crying, claiming she was the victim of circumstances, that she never meant for it to go this far. But I saw through her act. Deep down, I knew she had planned this for months, maybe longer, and I was just the last piece to fall into place. When the court finally approved the freeze on the property and the business, I felt a tiny bit of relief, like I'd stopped her from completely destroying us. But the emotional wounds ran deep. I couldn't help but feel a strange mixture of sadness and anger. I had loved her, believed in her. I had trusted her with everything. And she had turned around and betrayed me, cheated, lied, and schemed behind my back. It was a brutal realization, but I knew I couldn't keep living in denial. In the aftermath, I started to piece my life back together. I moved out of the house into a small apartment. I didn't want to be around her anymore. I couldn't. Every corner of that house reminded me of what we lost, what I thought we had. I cut ties with her, cut her out of my life as much as I could. I filed for divorce, knowing that I'd never be able to trust her again. The financial damage was significant, but I was more worried about the emotional toll, about how to rebuild my sense of self after all of this. Looking back, I realize how blind I was for so long. I kept making excuses for her, believing her lies because I wanted to believe in the marriage. I thought love meant trusting someone blindly, but I learned the hard way that trust has to be earned every single day. If I'd known sooner about her debts, her secret stash of gold, her plans to leave, maybe I could have stopped her before she got so far ahead. But now I see clearly. Betrayal can come from the people you love most, and sometimes the only way to survive it is to cut your losses and move on. I've learned that money, secrets, and lies are often intertwined in ways you never see coming. Trust is fragile, and once it's broken, it's almost impossible to repair. The hardest part was accepting that I might never fully understand her motives, that some people are just capable of betrayal without remorse. But I also learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I can survive this, rebuild, and find happiness again, even if it takes time. To anyone out there going through something similar, my advice is simple. Trust your instincts, don't ignore the warning signs, and don't let yourself be blinded by love. Protect yourself, your assets, and your sanity. When the truth finally comes out, it's going to hurt, bad, but facing it head-on is the only way to take control of your life again. Because in the end, the only person responsible for your happiness and safety is you. And no matter how much it hurts, you have to be willing to walk away from the lies, the betrayal, and the fake smiles. Only then can you start healing and building something real again.